Okay, so it was not in my plans to make a video this week, but there has been recently a video making its rounds that the message itself is problematic for me because as a psychologist, I can see how this can cause more harm than good, depending on how you hear it. So I want you to listen to this video really quickly and then let's talk about it.
People say all the time, I got used. They use me. In my head, I say, I hope so, because if you can't be used, that makes you useless. Nobody is wrong for seeing value in you and attaching to it in order to grow. You played the fool because you overextended yourself without being compensated in the proper form. A true prosperous bond forms when both people can use each other and the relationship becomes symbiotic. The reason a lot of people never get there is because we have this new term where everybody is looking for somebody that's equally yoked. A person with money don't need somebody with money. A person with money needs somebody with a plan. If you got a plan, you need somebody with money. If you got milk, you need somebody with cereal. If you got jelly, you need somebody with... You get the point? I'll have money, car, and a house and require the person you're looking for to have money, car, and a house. No, you need somebody who's packing where you lacking and vice versa. You can buy $2,000 electronics and they won't do nothing for you until you put that $5 battery in there and you get the $1 million results. If you the electronic, then you need to be looking for the battery so you can get to the results. You too busy looking at the cost of the laptop and the cost of the batteries and not knowing the worth is actually about $500,000 a piece, because once put together, you get a $1 million result. Yeah, I know that's a hard pill to swallow. Your love of your life, your business partner, that spiritual connection that you're looking for might not be who you thought it was, but lean not on your own understanding. Find somebody you can use and somebody you don't mind being used by. I'm just a messenger. He'll bless you too.
Okay, so I get it. And if you heard this, the first thing that came to my mind was Damian Wayans.
Message!
So although that message sounds amazing because it flowed so effortlessly and he seems very convicted to that message, it makes you feel like it's valid. It has some points, and in it did have maybe one valid point, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But there were a lot of issues with this message that I want to be clear as a psychologist and as someone who understands human behavior and mental health, that I do not want you to internalize as a good message. So first things first is I don't want anybody to ever internalize that being used is a good thing, because words have power. I know growing up, I'm an 80s baby, so we learned that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. Words hurt. Words have power. So what we will not do is make being used and taken advantage of a good thing, because there is no benefit to being used. There is no benefit to being taken advantage of. And the idea that you are only useful when you're being used by someone else in and of itself is flawed. You have value, whether you're being used in the benefit of another or someone else, or you being used in the benefit of yourself. You have value even when you're not being used in the benefit of someone else. You have value because you are a human being. You have value when you're doing things for your family, your friends, and the people who understand you and care about you and know that you are useful to them, even if you're not doing anything. You have value. Your only value is not in the benefit of someone else. So that was my first issue I take with this video. The idea that you being used makes you useful. Second issue I take up with this video that probably made this video sound good is that if you have a past of bad relationships or hurtful relationships or just toxic relationships, the number one thing that you felt that you lacked most of the time was any level of power and control. And this messaging sounds like you weren't being used. You weren't in a toxic relationship. You weren't in a bad relationship. You just didn't know how to use it to your advantage while you were in it. So it's giving you this false sense of control in a bad relationship. And it's making you feel like only if I use this person the same way they were using me, then maybe I would have benefited from being in this horrible relationship. And that is a fallacy, because 9 times out of 10 in those relationships, there is a power imbalance. There is a control imbalance. So this message sounds good because it sounds like, 1, I wasn't in a bad relationship, and 2, I can take my power back and my control back simply by doing to them what they were doing to me. And that's truly flawed thinking. That's a flawed message. Now, the one part of this video that I did understand, which was when he was talking about equally yoked, which is this idea of, and first of all, equally yoked is not a new term. If you ever grew up in a Black religious household, you've heard equally yoked, and you've also heard lean not on your own understanding. But again, that's why we've got to be mindful of our messengers, because we use things that sound good, but we don't really understand where they're coming from. and we don't take the time to try to learn where they're coming from before we use them to make our points. So, equally yoked is not new. Equally yoked has nothing to do with your material gains. So it's not about what you have. It's not about what you drive. It's not about where you live. It's not about the money you make. Equally yoked means you all have a similar mindset. You all share similar values. You all have a similar way of looking at life and wanting to move through life. And I think that's the point he was trying to make, where he made the statement that they're packing where you're lacking, which is basically someone has a strength where you may have a weakness, and vice versa. But that's having a healthy relationship balance. To some extent, that's equally yoked, but equally yoked kind of goes along those lines of, if I am a God-fearing woman, if I am a highly religious person, my religion is like the forefront of who I am. My partner then needs to be someone who has that same ideology, who has that same mindset. My partner is not going to be able to be someone who's agnostic or atheist, or who think religion is okay. It just ain't for them. That's what it means to not be equally yoked. You all aren't on the same page. And also this idea of someone having a strength where your weakness is that you all learn to benefit from one another in a relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that we are using each other. That means that we are using our strengths that we have to build each other in a way that helps us get to the next level in life. And that could be as simple as someone who's not outgoing but wants to be more outgoing, forming a relationship or a partnership with someone who is like the life of the party. That person can get them out of their shell. That person can get them out of their comfort zone. That person can teach them how to be more of an outgoing person. That's what it means to be able to be in the service of someone else. You're not being used by that person. You're not draining that person of their resources. You are learning to benefit from one another's strengths. Being used is never going to be seen as a positive. And I don't want anybody to ever see that as a positive, because as a psychologist, what I do not want coming into my office is someone saying to me, I felt like this relationship would have worked out better if only I had used them the same way they were using me. Using someone is not a good thing. There is no way to make this feel like a good thing. What I hope you take from listening to this today is, be careful of who your messenger is. And simply because a message sounds good does not always make the message correct. Be willing to challenge some of these messages that you're getting online, and make sure that you're getting it from a resource that's teaching you to challenge being okay with poor behaviors. I don't know this man from a can of paint. He's probably famous. All I'm saying is there was very limited merits to what he was saying, but the message is really clear that he wanted you to believe that being used could somehow benefit you. And I'm sorry, being used or being taken advantage of in any way is not going to benefit anyone.